He said I wasn't the kind of girl a man settles with. Just the type to pass the time, until someone better came along. He laughed when he said it like it was a compliment wrapped in a cruel joke. And 5 months ago I stood there humiliated and heartbroken, while he slipped a ring on her finger. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't even ask why. But this morning he was standing outside my apartment. And I wasn't the same woman he left behind. 5 months ago I was just Ava Hart. Quiet, dependable Ava. The girlfriend who knew his coffee order, reminded him of his meetings and held him when the pressure got too much. I was the girl who paid half the rent, split the takeout bills and still felt guilty for not doing enough. I believed in partnership. In love. In him. Until he turned to me in that little Italian restaurant, on our 3rd anniversary no less, and said with a smirk, "You're not the kind of girl a man settles down with, Ava. You're great. But she's the one." I proposed to her last night. The silence that followed was a vacuum. I remember the taste of metal in my mouth. The sting of tears that refused to fall. I stared at the ring on her finger in the Instagram post he casually slid across the table. She was younger. Shinier. An influencer type. The kind of girl who knew how to pose in front of champagne flutes and flash designer bags she didn't pay for. "She gets me," he added. "She's got that softness. That energy I need long term. You're too strong, too focused. Always planning your next move. It's exhausting." I didn't speak. Not a word. I gathered my coat, pushed in my chair and walked out. I didn't even take my half of the bill. That night I didn't cry. Instead I wrote down every moment I'd ever been small for him. Every time I skipped an opportunity to cheer him up. Every time I lowered my voice so he wouldn't feel threatened. Every dream I tucked away so he could chase his. And then I decided. I wasn't going to be the woman he left behind. I was going to become the storm he never saw coming. I left the apartment we shared within the week. Moved into a small 1-bedroom walk-up with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall. It was perfect. Quiet. Forgotten. Just like I wanted. I dug into work like a woman possessed. The job I'd been coasting at for years. Suddenly I became the sharpest blade in the drawer. I volunteered for everything, tackled problems no one else wanted, stayed late and showed up early. My boss noticed. So did the clients. I turned my marketing project into a citywide campaign that caught the attention of a luxury brand director. When I walked into that pitch meeting 2 months later in heels higher than my self-worth had ever been, I saw one of his old college friends on the panel. The recognition in his eyes was almost amusing. "You're Ava, right? Ethan's ex." I smiled. "No. I'm Ava Hart, head of the creative strategy for this campaign. And soon the face your brand will remember." He didn't say a word after that. But I knew the message would reach Ethan. Let him watch. I didn't change overnight. The bruises he left on my confidence were deep. But each win, each moment I stood up straighter, spoke louder, dressed sharper, stitched the torn pieces of me back together. Revenge wasn't about ruining him. It was about never letting him define me again. I stopped checking his social media after the 3rd month. I didn't need to see how happy they looked. Whether it was real or not didn't matter. What mattered was that I was rising. And that terrified him. Because this morning he was standing outside my apartment building. Hair slightly disheveled, shirt untucked, holding a cup of my favorite coffee like he remembered the little things. I paused at the corner, staying behind the street lamp just enough to watch him without being seen. He looked nervous. Like he'd been up all night. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. He checked his phone. No message. Then he turned, scanning the street. And that's when his eyes met mine. His mouth opened, ready to speak, but I didn't move. Not a step. He jogged across the street as if the last 5 months hadn't happened. "Ava, hey. I didn't think you'd be up this early." I raised a brow. "What are you doing here?" He shifted awkwardly. "I just wanted to talk. Things haven't been great." There was the crack in the perfect illusion. "She's not who I thought she was," he added, eyes darting. "And I've been thinking about you. About us." I crossed my arms. "About the girl you couldn't settle with?" His face flushed. "I was wrong. I see that now. I made a mistake. You were always the one who grounded me. Who challenged me. You never just agreed, you pushed me to be better. I didn't get it then, but now." He trailed off, looking at the sidewalk like it held answers. "I miss you, Ava." I let the silence stretch. Then I smiled. Not the kind he remembered. Not the soft, understanding smile I used to wear like armor. This one was sharper. I'm not the same girl you left behind, I said calmly. And you're not the kind of man I'd settle for now. His jaw tensed. You don't mean that. I do, I replied. You gave me the best gift without knowing it. You showed me exactly who you are, just in time for me to rebuild without you weighing me down. He blinked. So, that's it. I stepped closer, my heels clicking like punctuation marks. That was it the day you chose her. I just took my time becoming someone you couldn't touch anymore. Then I turned. Walked past him into the building. Never looked back. They always come back when they see you shine. When the version of you they tried to break becomes someone they no longer deserve. But that's not the point of revenge. The real revenge is not needing to say a word. Because the woman he left behind? She's not here anymore. And the woman he met this morning? She's just getting started. The morning Ethan showed up outside my apartment, I let him see exactly what he lost. But I didn't let him in. Not into my home. Not into my life. And especially not into my head. The moment the door shut behind me, I poured myself a glass of orange juice, kicked off my heels and smiled. It was time for the next phase. A year ago I was a background player, good at what I did but invisible. I was the girl who typed the minutes, presented other people's ideas and clapped when someone else got the credit. But 5 months ago I decided to build an empire out of everything they underestimated. And the foundation had just been laid. My last campaign with Lux Skincare hadn't just been successful, it had gone viral. Their sales jumped 34% in 6 weeks. A Forbes blog mentioned the strategy as refreshingly ruthless. And they'd used my name. Not the firm's. Suddenly my inbox was flooded. Brands, startups, even legacy firms were reaching out. My boss, Richard, called me into his office. Ava, he said, not even trying to hide his unease. We need to talk about your contract. I raised a brow. What about it? You've gotten too much attention. We can't match what they're offering. It was almost funny. The company that once gave me exposure as a raise now couldn't afford the talent they ignored for years. I understand, I said coolly. That's why I'm not renewing. He blinked. You're leaving? No, I replied, gathering the contract. I'm taking the clients with me. Every single one who requested me by name. Ava, that's not how this works. It is now, I said, offering a polite smile. You built a brand on the backs of women like me. Quiet, compliant, invisible. But I've made myself visible. And if you think I'm staying small so you can stay comfortable, you're mistaken. That afternoon I walked out with nothing but my ideas and the memory of every boardroom I was told to stay quiet in. And within a week Heart and Sharp was born. The first few weeks were brutal. Endless paperwork, sleepless nights, branding decisions, legal calls, budget meetings, office hunts. But I was alive. For the first time in years I wasn't surviving, I was building. The apartment transformed into a war room. My whiteboard became a battlefield of strategies, timelines and client lists. My phone buzzed nonstop. And slowly power shifted. One campaign led to another. One brand turned into 5. I hired my first assistant, Camille. A sharp, sarcastic genius with a photographic memory and zero tolerance for nonsense. She was 26, unapologetic, and reminded me of a version of myself I hadn't known how to be. You really turned getting dumped into a CEO origin story, she said one night, munching on popcorn as we stayed late. I didn't get dumped, I replied. I was set free. Meanwhile, Ethan lurked. He started small. A message here. A comment on an old post. Then a voicemail. Just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. You're killing it out there. Pride from a man who never believed in me? Cute. Then came the real twist. A leaked video. Someone forwarded it to me. Ethan and his new fiancée mid-argument in a restaurant. Loud. Public. Her voice rang out across the camera. I don't care how successful she is now. You still proposed to me. So why are you still talking about her? My stomach didn't flip. My heart didn't ache. I simply closed the video, sat back and whispered, good. Because I wasn't chasing closure anymore. I was building legacy. By month 4, Heart and Sharp landed a partnership with Phoenix Financial, one of the top venture capital firms in the city. The deal A rebrand for their entire portfolio. I was sitting in the conference room on the top floor of their sleek Manhattan tower, surrounded by men in $1,000 suits who once wouldn't give me the time of day. Now they leaned in when I spoke. Your approach is aggressive, one said. You're not afraid to take risks. That's why it works, I replied. You don't hire me to play it safe. You hire me to win. And we did. We took a floundering app, revamped its identity, ran a campaign that leaned into its imperfections, and it hit 1 million downloads in 6 weeks. The client sent me a bottle of champagne. Ethan sent another voicemail. I saw your article in Entrepreneur. You look incredible. Can we meet? I didn't respond. But fate had its own plan. Because the universe, with its twisted sense of humor, brought us together again, publicly. At the Phoenix Gala. The gala was black tie. Glamorous. Powerful. I walked in wearing a midnight blue gown, custom-made, with a slit that said I was no longer here to be modest. My heels echoed on the marble floor and heads turned, not because I was with someone, but as I walked in alone and they knew who I was. Across the room I saw him. Ethan. Standing beside her, his once fiancé. Only now the ring was gone. His eyes widened the second they found me. He excused himself, weaving through the crowd like a man chasing a dream. Ava, he said breathlessly, I didn't know you'd be here. I'm on the board now, I replied with a neutral smile. Phoenix appointed me after the last campaign. You look different. No, I said, sipping my champagne. I finally look like myself. He opened his mouth to say something else, probably a line he rehearsed in front of a mirror. But then the MC took the stage. And now, he announced, please welcome Ava Hart, our keynote speaker and one of the city's most powerful creative strategists. I met Ethan's eyes, leaned in slightly and whispered, enjoy the speech. It's about value. Then I walked away toward the spotlight. 3 days after the Phoenix Gala, my inbox buzzed with a subject line I didn't expect. Discreet consultation, regarding Ethan Granger. I opened it and my breath paused. It was from Nova Black, a private investigator who specialized in corporate scandals, background vetting and reputation management. Her message was direct. We are vetting Mr. Granger for a potential executive position at a tech investment firm. Your name was mentioned several times during our due diligence interviews. Would you be open to a confidential discussion? I leaned back in my chair staring at the screen. I hadn't said Ethan's name in public in months. I didn't need to. But the fact that he was trying to crawl into a space I now thrived in? That was enough to make me hit reply. We met at a quiet rooftop bar downtown, neutral territory with low lighting and soft jazz. Nova was as sleek and precise as her reputation. Black suit, tablet in hand and eyes that didn't miss a thing. I'll keep this brief, she said after introductions. Your name was flagged when Ethan's references spoke about his past relationships and collaborative challenges. You're the only one with a significant professional background intersecting with his personal history. What can you tell me? I paused, then smiled. I can tell you this, I said. Ethan Granger is great at appearances. He's charming, articulate, knows how to mirror what people want. But under pressure he withers. He's not a builder, he's a borrower. He borrows energy, talent, vision. And when those things aren't his anymore, he crumbles. Nova took notes. He proposed to another woman while dating me, I added. Didn't even hide it. Told me I wasn't the kind of girl men settle with. His exact words. Nova looked up, blinking once. He said that. I nodded. On our 3rd anniversary. Publicly. She tapped her screen. Noted. We've received complaints from former clients of his. Financial inconsistencies. Overpromised deliverables. Unregistered consulting charges. Sound familiar? I raised an eyebrow. Sounds like the Ethan I knew. I appreciate your time, she said, rising. And Ava? For what it's worth. Most people wouldn't have handled that the way you did. Grace looks good on you. Grace? Oh, this wasn't grace. This was control. And I'd never let go of it again. A week passed before the whispers started. Camille forwarded me a tweet. Rumor has it Ethan Granger just got blacklisted from Viridian Tech. Something shady about stolen project proposals? I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just kept working. Until I got a call from a number I hadn't saved in months. It rang once. Twice. On the third I picked up. Ava. His voice was strained. Off balance. I'm not sure what's happening, but someone's been spreading rumors about me. About projects I worked on, stuff that's not true. Isn't it? I asked calmly. He paused. You don't understand. They're pulling contracts. I had a job offer from Viridian, gone overnight. And now people are saying I stole campaign ideas? That's your work, Ava. You don't believe I'd do that, right? Believe. I echoed. Ethan, I know you. He didn't respond. You used to tell people my work was your idea. At parties, in meetings, you made me invisible when it suited you. That's not true. But it is, I cut in. You used my strategies, my contacts, my vision. And then you dismissed me. Because I wasn't docile. Because I had ideas of my own. And now you're shocked the industry finally sees through you. There was heavy breathing on the other end. I'm drowning, Ava, he whispered. I need your help. Please. Just a reference. Just tell them. I hung up. Not out of cruelty. But because I'd finally learned. You don't throw life rafts to the people who once held you underwater. That same week, The Rise of Hart and Sharp was featured in Business Insider. The article titled Me, the Architect of Her Own Empire, detailing my climb from anonymity to industry dominance. Buried in the comments section was a single post that caught my eye. This article left out one detail. She used to date Ethan Granger. Smartest move she ever made? Leaving him behind. I didn't know who posted it. But they weren't wrong. Camille walked into my office with a sly grin. You're trending again. Good or bad? Good for you. Bad for Ethan. She slid a folder onto my desk. Inside were copies of recent articles, tweets, and one particularly scathing exposé in an independent tech journal. How Ethan Granger burned bridges in Silicon Alley and got left in the dust. He'd become the cautionary tale. The man who flew too close to brilliance that wasn't his and got burned when it left him. The final blow came during the Vanguard Women's Summit, where I was invited to speak on a panel titled Redefining Power. After the discussion, a woman in her late 20s approached me, eyes wide. Hi, I'm Julia. I was engaged to Ethan. She shifted nervously. I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For not stooping to his level. For becoming more. She paused. He used to talk about you a lot. Said you were too intense, too ambitious. That you were impossible to satisfy. But the way he said it, it sounded like fear. Not anger. I tilted my head. What happened? I found your article. Watched your interviews. Started seeing how different the version of you he described was from the one the world sees now. And it hit me, he didn't leave you for someone better. He left you because he couldn't handle someone stronger. I didn't say a word. Just placed a hand on her shoulder and said, don't let his weakness make you shrink. She nodded, lips trembling. He proposed because he thought I'd stay small. And now? I asked. I left the ring on his desk. He cried. I smiled. Not for me. For every woman who'd ever been told she was too much, when she was just enough to make a man like him collapse. After the Vanguard Women's Summit, I didn't go home right away. Instead, I walked the city for 2 hours. My heels in one hand, my phone in the other. Not to scroll. Just to feel its weight. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not a boyfriend. Not a boss. Not a family member trying to keep me humble. I stood on 57th Street, right outside the building where I once interviewed for a junior marketing role and got told I wasn't the right energy. That same company had just offered Hart and Sharp $1 million rebranding contract. We didn't even return the call. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I was rewriting the standard. We expanded in the 5th month. 2 new offices, Chicago and San Diego. A board of directors composed entirely of women and queer creatives. People who'd been told they were too different to lead. We signed clients that had once laughed at our pitch decks. Camille called it poetic karma. But I didn't want poetry. I wanted permanence. Hart and Sharp wasn't just a company now. It was a movement. We mentored young founders, invested in female-run startups, created scholarships for students who couldn't afford design school but had brilliance in their blood. My past was never mentioned. Ethan's name? Dead weight. Forgotten. Until one morning Camille burst into my office with a look I hadn't seen in months. "You need to see this." He tossed a glossy magazine onto my desk. Urban Edge Weekly, cover story. From Hotshot to Has Been, The Fall of Ethan Granger. I didn't reach for it. I didn't need to read it. "I thought you might want to gloat," Camille added carefully. I looked up. "Gloating is for people who haven't moved on." She smirked. "So, you really don't care?" "I care," I said, sipping my coffee. "But not about him. I care that the girls who watched him rise for the wrong reasons now see what real power looks like. Because it wasn't Ethan who broke me. It was the world that believed him. And now that same world was putting my name on the top of every list he used to dominate." 3 days later I was invited to deliver a TED Talk. Topic: Self-worth as strategy, turning betrayal into billion-dollar thinking. I stood backstage, mic clipped to my collar, breathing steady as the crowd settled. I thought I'd be nervous. But instead I was calm. Almost light. Because this wasn't a stage anymore. It was a throne. And every scar I once tried to hide? Now a crown. Afterward, during the Q&A, a young woman in the audience raised her hand. She couldn't have been more than 19. "What would you say," she asked, "to the version of yourself sitting in that restaurant 5 months ago, hearing him say you weren't the kind of girl to settle with?" I didn't hesitate. I'd tell her this: "You're not the kind of girl men settle for. You're the kind of woman men never recover from. And that's exactly who you were born to be." The room went silent. Then erupted. Because they understood. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was a blueprint. Weeks passed. More growth. More press. More peace. Until a letter arrived. An actual letter. Handwritten. I opened it slowly, the ink familiar. But heavy-handed. Thin. "Ava. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a reply. But watching you become everything I never believed you could be. It made me realize I never deserved to be beside you in the first place. You're not the girl I walked away from. You're the woman I'll regret for the rest of my life. E." I folded the letter once. Then again. Then dropped it into the shredder. Some memories don't deserve space. Even in a drawer. By month 6 I was offered the cover of Fortune. Not because I was Ethan's ex. Not because I was a woman in business. But because I'd built something that shook the ground beneath the industry. The photo shoot was surreal. We shot in the penthouse of the Heart and Sharp HQ. The stylist asked me if I wanted to wear something bold, red, gold, leather. I said no. Just give me black. Clean. Unapologetic. The way power really looks when you're no longer trying to please anyone. That night I stood on my balcony with a glass of champagne, alone under the city lights. No tears. No speeches. Just the sound of everything I used to be. Fading. I thought of Ethan. Of the version of me that loved him. That would have bent herself into something smaller just to be enough for him. And I whispered aloud, not to him but to her. "You didn't fail. You grew. And he just couldn't keep up." That's what happens when a woman stops waiting to be chosen. She chooses herself. And the world has no choice but to follow. It started with a dinner invitation. A sleek white envelope slid under my door, printed on thick cardstock with his initials embossed in gold. E.g. No message. No apology. Just a place, a time and a date. Tuesday 7:30 p.m. I stared at it for a moment, wondering what version of Ethan thought this was romantic. The man who proposed to someone else 5 months ago, now wanted a quiet dinner? Camille took one look at the card and scoffed. "He thinks he's the plot twist." "He's a footnote," I replied, tossing the card in the recycling bin. But as Tuesday approached, a strange calm settled over me. Not nerves. Not anticipation. Clarity. Closure wasn't something I needed. But maybe it was something I'd earned the right to control. So I went. Not for him. For me. I arrived 5 minutes early, dressed in a tailored suit that made me feel like steel. No makeup tricks. No soft lighting. Just Ava Hart exactly as I am. He was already at the table when I arrived. Nervous, fidgeting, a half-empty glass of whiskey in front of him. He stood when he saw me. "Ava." I nodded, sitting without offering a smile. "Ethan." He looked older. Not in age but in regret. A man who had lived long months replaying mistakes he thought he could fix with charm. "How have you been?" he asked. You follow my press. You tell me. He winced. Fair. The waiter came. I ordered tea. Nothing else. He cleared his throat. I wanted to talk. Face to face. I know I messed up. You didn't mess up, I said quietly. You made a choice. He blinked. I didn't mean to hurt you. I tilted my head. But you did. And you didn't just hurt me, Ethan. You dismissed me. You humiliated me. And the worst part? You truly believed you were upgrading. He looked away. I was stupid. No, I said. You were cruel. And the apology isn't enough. Not because I want revenge, but because I don't need it. He exhaled slowly. Then why did you come? Because closure isn't about getting an apology. It's about giving yourself permission to let go completely. I leaned in. This dinner isn't about us, Ethan. This is about me walking out one last time on my terms. He looked broken. But I felt whole. When the tea arrived, I didn't touch it. I stood. I've got a 6 a.m. flight, I said, slipping into my coat. Where to? Singapore. Expansion opportunity. His eyes widened. That's incredible. I smiled faintly. It is. But you're not part of it. Not this chapter. Not this story. Not anymore. He stood abruptly. Can I ask you one thing? I paused. Was there ever a moment after I left when you missed me? I looked at him, really looked, and then answered with full honesty. No. Because the version of me that would have missed him? She's gone. Outside the night was quiet. A light drizzle coated the city in silver, reflections dancing on the pavement like ghosts. I stood for a moment, breathing it in. That dinner could have been the moment I cried, raged, or relived what happened. But instead it was the night I realized something more powerful than revenge. I had nothing left to prove. Ethan's downfall was already in motion. But my rise. Just beginning. The next morning I boarded the flight to Singapore. First class. Window seat. No distractions. While sipping my coffee at 35,000 feet, Camille texted a headline link. Ethan Granger steps down from Granger Tech amid investigation. I didn't open the article. Didn't need to. Some stories crumble without any push. They simply collapse under the weight of their own lies. The Singapore deal was a dream. We secured a multinational partnership that gave Hart and Sharp a global footprint. Within weeks, our team was building campaigns across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. At the official launch gala, I stood on stage and addressed the crowd of founders, creators, and CEOs. When they told me I wasn't the kind of woman men settle with, they were right. Because I wasn't born to be a destination. I was born to be a force. And the room erupted in applause. Later that evening, I stepped outside the event hall into the humid Singapore air, stars glimmering above the city skyline. A notification buzzed on my phone. Ethan Granger's account deleted. A digital ending to a story I'd already burned to the ground. And as I stared out over the bay, something settled deep in my bones. Not peace. Not pride. But power. The global expansion of Hart and Sharp was no longer a dream. It was reality. Our Singapore launch was just the beginning. By month 7, our agency had opened satellite offices in Berlin and Dubai. Fortune called us the fastest-growing creative powerhouse led by a woman in the last decade. Every article mentioned my name, but none mentioned his. Because he was no longer part of the conversation. I wasn't just building campaigns now. I was mentoring the next generation of founders. Speaking at universities. Investing in women-led startups. One of our partner firms, run by a 23-year-old coding prodigy named Isla Chen, went public within 11 months. On her first day of trading, she called me. You don't know this, Isla said breathlessly, but I started because of your TED Talk. I paused, taken aback. I watched it while sitting in my car after a breakup, she continued. The guy told me I was too intense. Said I'd never be loved and successful. I laughed softly. Funny how the two always seem like opposites when a man feels small. Exactly, she said. That's when I promised myself I'd never be small again. Thank you, Ava. You didn't just open doors, you tore down walls. I ended the call in silence. Because some victories don't need applause. They live in echoes. A week later, I returned home from a whirlwind trip to Dubai and found an envelope on my desk. No logo. No return address. Inside a photo. It was a snapshot of a woman standing outside an office building. Her eyes were hollow. Her makeup smudged. Her expression broken. Scrawled in ink on the back. She left him. I thought you should know. There was no signature. But I knew who it was from. Julia. The woman he left me for. I stared at the photo for a long moment, not out of satisfaction, but out of solemn recognition. She had learned the truth the way I had. But where I walked out with fire in my spine, she was still burning. And in that moment I didn't see a rival. I saw a mirror. A reminder of the version of me that once waited too long to walk away. I took a deep breath, opened my laptop and typed her name. Then I sent her a short message. When you're ready, I'd like to offer you a position. Not because of him, but because I know what it's like to rebuild. And no one should do it alone. His true power isn't revenge. It's reach. The months flew by. Our agency was now on 5 continents. Our leadership team was on the cover of Time under the headline, The New Guard. At our annual company summit, I stood before over 300 employees from around the world. Most of them women. Most of them once told they were too much of something, and not enough of what mattered. I took a deep breath. I used to believe success meant being chosen, I said. That to matter, someone had to love you loudly, publicly, permanently. But I was wrong. Silence blanketed the room. Success is loving yourself so deeply that no one's opinion can shake your worth. It's walking into a room knowing you belong, not because someone said so, but because you built the floor. And they rose to their feet. Not because I needed applause, but because they knew. One morning, I returned from an early breakfast meeting to find Camille pacing by my office window. Okay, she said, spinning around. Don't get mad. I accepted a speaking invitation on your behalf. I raised a brow. You booked me without asking? He grinned. It's a high school girls' leadership conference. I figured you'd want it. I paused. Then smiled. Perfect. Because the next generation, they didn't need to hear about heartbreak. They needed to hear about power. That Friday, I walked into a small auditorium filled with 16 and 17-year-olds, dressed in their best, eyes wide with curiosity and ambition. I told them everything. Not about Ethan, but about how I once thought shrinking made me lovable. How I believed being quiet made me respectable. How I mistook tolerance for strength and silence for grace. And then, I said, someone told me I wasn't the kind of girl men settle with. They gasped collectively. I smiled. And they were right. I paused, letting it sink in. I am not someone you settle with. I am someone you rise with. Or you get left behind. They erupted. Cheering. Crying. Laughing. Because they saw what I once didn't. Power doesn't beg. It builds. That night I sat in my apartment alone. The lights of the city flickered through the window, and the noise below sounded like a symphony of everything I'd survived. I opened my journal, one I hadn't touched since the day Ethan left. The first page was still the same. Day 1. I will not break for him. I turned to the last page. Wrote 6 words. He was the beginning. I'm the ending. Then closed the book. And never opened it again. She didn't just walk away. She walked above. The end.